Doing deep investigative reporting on television is an endangered species. We're aiming to keep it alive, keep the tradition alive, and do more than that to build a wider audience. And it's exciting to take the high road, to keep to the standards that Frontline has developed, and I'm very proud that this show has met those standards so successfully. And at the same time, to go after a wider and younger audience, to think about how we produce investigative reporting in multimedia across media platforms, and create programs that are dynamic and roll out over time.
What's interesting here, this is in its infancy, this situation. We have spectacular young editors, young shooters, young producers, all kinds of folks inside SOC. Different parts of the school are going to we can start to integrate a lot of talent even outside those classes. And so this was our maiden voyage, really. And so the potential here, and it's not just the students, it's the faculty. We have an extraordinary bench here, and we look forward to working with on a lot of really spectacular projects down the road. There's a big world out there, and it needs to be investigated.
Lowell Bergman, sitting on a plane, 9/11, grounded, somewhere in Lexington, Kentucky, I believe, finds himself sitting next to a woman who is an investigator for the EPA. And she tells him about a company she was actually on her way to go and look at in Tyler, Texas, that had a sort of bad safety record. And within that next series of weeks, at his Berkeley journalism seminar on investigative journalism, assigns a couple of his students to go to the public record about this company. And they start digging in the public record out of this company in Tyler, Texas. Out of that came not just a 3-part New York Times series, a Frontline documentary, a CBC Canada documentary, and the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service Journalism, but they also got jobs at the New York Times out of it. So there is something very special in these kinds of relationships if you do put really fine professionals together with smart students.
And I can tell you honestly, I actually pitched a story very similar to this to the powers that be at CNN, and they had no interest in it whatsoever. So that should tell you something. It was so wonderful to work with a group of people who care about journalism with a capital J, and that. All those anachronisms like facts and getting it straight, all that stuff, they actually care about. And in this day and age, I mean, we're in the middle of we're in this tectonic shift right now. We're in the middle of an earthquake, and I'm one of the victims. But I also feel like I'm learning as I go along, as we all are.
Started as a map, but was a map of identifying hubs around the country where people could see what airlines were flying out of the hubs, what regionals were flying out, and then connecting that to safety data. And the big story for us really, and it seems simplistic, but it was who are you flying on? That was the question that we started with. Who's flying your airplane? And now, for the first time, you can actually, through the connection of all this data, consumers can actually go in and find out some safety data about who these carriers are. So
what value we're going to give back to the culture is by the stories we choose to tell. Once we're inside those stories, we have to be cool, calm, rational, and fair. Not balanced, fair. I think Rick, to his credit, went out of his way to get Sabatini, Cohen, anybody from the industry who would talk, from the FAA who would talk on the record, worked very hard for that. And in fact, I think there were moments where I said, do we really need one more bite from that guy? And he said, yes, we do.
I guess, from watching this, I got the impression that you investigated Colgan Air and took your conclusions and applied them to the entire airline industry. I'm not sure did you look at, I guess I'm wondering if you looked at other airline practices.
There's no question that we looked very closely at Colgan. That was the plane that crashed. We did that through the vehicle of Colgan. Now, that doesn't mean that every regional airline is exactly like Colgan, and we were talking to people out in the industry, not only pilots, but people that were working for regional companies. We interviewed, not necessarily on camera, but certainly for background research. I talked to executives at various regional airlines. So it's not an entire, it's not an indictment of every single airline, but I think the major issues that we were raising and trying to get at, which had to do with the relationship between the majors and the regionals, that's universal.